The second FPL wildcard is now available to all managers, and many have already activated it going into Game Week 21. So in this video, I'm going to show you what I think is the best Game Week 21 wildcard team. And even if you haven't activated your wildcard, I'm going to discuss the upcoming double and blank game weeks alongside some of the best long-term players for your team. So as always, make sure you do drop a like on this video, smash that subscribe button. Without further ado, let's get into today's video. So before we get into the wildcard team review, I think it's really important to go through some essential information that you definitely need to know whether you're wildcarding or not going into Game Week 21. I've got 9 points here that I think will really benefit us. So number one, all FPL managers have their second wildcard available. I've discussed this in the intro. If you had your first wildcard and you didn't use it, unfortunately, it doesn't roll over into the second half of the season. You don't now have two wildcards. You simply just have one, the same as everybody else. And you can now use it between Game Week 21 up until Game Week 38. I, for one, am not using it yet, but I know a lot of managers are doing so. Number two, Son and Salah are going to miss Game Week 21, guaranteed. Son is off in the Asian Cup and Mo Salah is off in the African Cup of Nations. That is why they are currently red flagged in the game. The big factor about them is we don't know when they're going to return. First up, Egypt in the African Cup of Nations are about 5th or 6th favourites. So based on the odds, we don't think they're necessarily going to reach the final. So he could return around Game Week 23, 24. But if they do get to the final, it looks like he could be missing up until Game Week 25. Son, on the other hand, with South Korea, are second favourites for the Asian Cup. So he has a bit more of an opportunity to reach the final. If they do, once again, Son could be out anywhere between Game Week 21 up until Game Week 25. So my advice is sell these players. I think there are too much value to be keeping them on your bench for potentially up to 4 or 5 game weeks. But we need to monitor how the teams get on in their international competitions. Number three, and this is a really big one, Haaland didn't feature in their FA Cup game yesterday. This is really big because we've seen him in full training, but Pep still hasn't given him any minutes. And going into this weekend, away against Newcastle, which is still a really tricky fixture, I don't have the confidence right now to invest in buying Erling Haaland, even for a wildcard draft. Even if he does start, are we really expecting him to play the full 90 minutes? I'd be very surprised at that. But one player that did get minutes was Kevin De Bruyne, who came off the bench for 30 minutes. But once again, plenty of quotes from Pep suggesting he's going to slowly ease him back into the team. Number four, Bowen went off with an injury in stoppage time in their FA Cup game against Bristol City. We don't know how the severity of it's going to be. And the big thing about West Ham is that they don't actually play this weekend. They play the following weekend. It's one of the longest game weeks of the season. So we're not going to get any news from David Moyes regarding Jarrod Bowen. So we kind of have to go into this game week with a little bit of uncertainty about his availability. And that is something you do need to note. Number five, Tony is back from his long-term ban. Finally, one of the best FPL forwards in the game is now available for Brentford. Brentford in a bit of a sticky patch right now, and the game time of Tony is a little bit uncertain, but for those managers that want to go there, he is an amazing alternative for your teams. Number six, Game Week 25, a potential double game week. Now, the teams that could be included in this double include Man City, Brentford, Liverpool and Luton, but we don't actually have any guarantees about it. And again, Game Week 25 could be the introduction again of the likes of Mo Salah back into the Premier League. My advice is this: follow people like Ben Crellin on Twitter and of course subscribe to the channel, as when we do get updates, I will obviously tell you. But for now, we don't know anything apart from a high possibility of a double Game Week 25. Number seven, the Game Week 21 deadline has moved to Friday. The Burnley-Luton game has now been pushed forward to Friday due to the FA Cup replay. So do note, it is Friday evening, 6:15 PM UK time. Last 2 points. Number eight, Game Week 21 is going to be one of the longest game weeks of the season. And what I mean by that is from the kickoff of the first game and the kickoff of the final game, it is being played over a 10-game period. And this is a bit of an issue because with the deadline being this Friday and games playing possibly 9 days later, we're not going to get press conferences for basically any of these teams. So if there are injury concerns with your side, unfortunately, we might not hear anything from them apart from those few teams that are going to play this weekend. So do take note of that. And last up, for those that are looking for a Liverpool alternative, Darwin, Diaz and Gakpo started in the FA Cup game. Jota was benched. If you're looking for Jota as an alternative, do note that he is still a minutes risk in this team, but he did play very well when he came off the bench. So with that said, let's get into this wildcard team. So it's time to deep dive into this Game Week 21 wildcard team, and it's worth noting the prices of the players that I've put up on the screens are the current prices. I am conscious that this draft may seem quite expensive, as I am noting I do have quite a lot of money in the bank for when I built this, but I am conscious a lot of you maybe had these players for a long time, so you've probably accumulated value and bought them at a cheaper price. That's the hope anyway. So first up in goal, I've gone for the cheap option of Dubravka and Areola, both at 4.2 million. Now, I'm going to pop up the fixture rotation for both of these players here to give you an idea on how they look basically over the next 6 to 8 game weeks. So first up, you can see we got West Ham away against Sheffield United and at home against Bournemouth. Then we got Dubravka for those 2 great games at home against Luton and away against Forest, and also Bournemouth at home. And you can see how it rotates over the coming game weeks. I think it's a really good pairing. And also, when we're spending a lot of money, and you will see in this wildcard draft, I think we need to make cost savings where we can. In the goalkeeper department, I think that's exactly where we need to do it. I don't think there are any goalkeepers that are really standing up this year as guaranteed picks. I think a lot of teams are conceding in generic. I don't think we need to be spending the additional 1.3 million on the likes of Alisson, Edison, or even going up to someone like a Martinez. I think we keep it cheap and cheerful. The only downside of this is obviously if Newcastle dip into the market in the January window, maybe pick up someone like a David De Gea. That will impact Dubravka's minutes longer term. But as of right now, I think the Dubravka-Areola rotation is perfectly fine. And I'm conscious you probably have at least one of these in your teams. So you probably bought them at an even cheaper price. So selling them is quite a difficult task. So if you're wildcarding right now, I would stick with this pairing, go through the rotation long term, and deal with the situation if we do have it with Dubravka. And you can simply just play Areola each and every game week. Next up, we have the defenders, and the first of my essential picks, those that you can see which have a red box around them, I'm deeming as essential picks for your Game Week 21 wildcard. Anybody that doesn't means that they can be taken out of this team based on how you feel about them. But as you can see, Trent, Estupiñán and Pedro Porro have the essential ring around them, and personally I don't think you can build a wildcard team without them. For the last 20 game weeks, it has been so boring with defenders. We've been having loads of centre backs like Saliba, Gabriel, some of you have been going for the likes of Levi Colwell, and it's just boring. These are players that are going to tick over with 6 pointers, 7 pointers maybe. We need to get back to those exciting fullbacks that have the potential of double-digit returns, and I don't think they come much better than these 3 players. Trent right now at 8.5 million is ridiculously expensive, but with Salah away, with Son away, with even Haaland being an injury doubt going into Game Week 21, we have some cash to spend, and I don't think anybody justifies it more than Trent Alexander-Arnold. He's the heartbeat of that Liverpool team, and with their keeping clean sheets, he is racking up the bonus points right now, so I think he is worth his weight in gold. And a player that I absolutely love, and he's back from injury, is Pervis Estupiñán, scoring in Game Week 20, scoring another worldie in the FA Cup. When we're talking about players who have attacking potential, this is your man at 4.9 million. The fixtures long term for Brighton are absolutely fantastic, and I don't think we really need to be messing about with their attacks. Spoiler alert, I think Estupiñán is the perfect man into that Brighton team to really target those fixtures because he's such an attacking asset in their team. We've seen it before where he's on the 90th minute, the furthest man in that team. I don't think we need to go for an attacker. We go for Estupiñán and keep him in long term. Another player is Pedro Porro. Yes, the Spurs defence is a little bit ropey. Yes, they can see goals, but Van de Ven is expected to be back from Game Week 21 onwards. They're expected to sign a new centre-back as well. So I am thinking that Spurs might become a little bit more tighter at the back, and Pedro Porro is just a bonus point magnet once again. If they are going to keep a clean sheet, you know he is going to be in and amongst a double-digit return. So those 3 for me are absolutely essential. The other 2 are up for debate, but I think we can go really cheap with these. Yes, you could put an Arsenal defender in, maybe a Saliba, a Gabriel, or you go for a Man City defender. My advice probably would be Kyle Walker, but we're looking to save costs when we can. And when you pick players like Trent, Estupiñán and Pedro Porro, you literally can't bench them any game week. So the 4th and 5th defenders are usually going to be bench players in your team. So I've gone for Gusto at 4.2 million. What I've seen from Chelsea, they're a better team with him in it. He's been fantastic, and I don't see him losing his place anytime soon. I think he's going to get guaranteed game time playing at right back, and he offers attacking threat, which is really important. Last up, I've gone for Brighton's Van Heck. Now, previously I had Charlie Taylor. That is absolutely fine if you want to go for Charlie Taylor, if you owned him when he was 3.9 million. Burnley aren't really going to keep clean sheets, but he does have the potential for attacking returns. Now, Brighton themselves don't keep clean sheets either, so probably a little bit counterintuitive here. But with the fixtures coming up for Brighton, I just feel like there is a potential for Van Heck to maybe pick up a few clean sheets along the way. I'm not saying they are, but at 4 million, he's been playing every single minute for Brighton recently. I think De Zerbi really does like him, so I think at 4 million, he's an absolute steal. And I don't mind the Brighton double up if you really do need to delve into your fifth defender in your wildcard team. Now taking a look at the midfielders, and as you can see, I have Phil Foden and Cole Palmer as your essentials for your Game Week 21 wildcard draft. I think Phil Foden is in unbelievable form right now, and I know Kevin De Bruyne is returning from his injury. He had 30 minutes in that FA Cup game, but I just don't see Phil Foden coming out of this team. If anything, I probably do see Julian Alvarez's game time being impacted by the return of Kevin De Bruyne. I would be so surprised if Pep is looking at Phil Foden right now and thinking to himself, you know what, you're not doing enough for me. I need to take you out of the team. I think they keep him in right now because in the positions of those little pockets, Phil Foden is so much better than Julian Alvarez. And when Erling Haaland does return, then I really do think it is going to be a combination of Haaland, Foden and De Bruyne in that Man City team, with Alvarez sharing the minutes alongside those three. The big factor is, do you trust Phil Foden's minutes long term? And I just think looking at the fixtures coming up and a potential double in Game Week 25, he is worth the risk while he's in this form. The other one is going to be Cole Palmer, an absolute non-negotiable in your team. I know he's 5.6 million now. Maybe you haven't owned him previously when he was like 5.2 million, but still, Chelsea's fixtures are decent, and I think he's just going to have guaranteed game time in this team. And we're also seeing, while he's on penalties, he's also being involved in open play goals, which is the kind of downside that everybody was talking about. He's now getting the goals, so I think he is just absolutely locked into FPL teams. Now, the other three I think are up for debate. I'm going to talk about Bukayo Saka first. Now, Arsenal's fixtures coming up are mixed. Going into this weekend at home against Crystal Palace, he is definitely a captaincy choice for FPL managers, and Arsenal right now are just not in a good place. But I think Bukayo Saka is cooked, basically. I think he does need a little bit of rest, but I don't think Arteta's going to give him it. I just don't think he ever really does. So I think Saka is going to be one of those that is going to continue to play for Arsenal. And I'm just of the understanding right now that Arsenal are going to return back to their best eventually. I think they're too good of a team. I think Arteta is a good enough manager to find a solution to their problems right now. I think Arsenal are still better than most teams in the league. So coming forward with their fixtures, I do think there are returns still for those Arsenal attackers. But I do understand if you're right now making a wildcard team and you don't want to put an Arsenal midfielder in it. I get it. I think that definitely is a solution for some managers to avoid Arsenal completely. I just think there is too much of a team there to not go for the main man. So I'm going to stick Bukayo Saka in there, but I'm not against maybe taking him out after a few weeks if we need to bring back someone like a Son or a Mo Salah. I think it's beneficial paying a little bit more and having that price locked in at 9 million in your wildcard teams. Bowen is another one. This guy is absolutely locked into your Game Week 21 wildcard drafts if he didn't go off injured in that FA Cup game. Now, the problem is West Ham don't play until the 21st of January, but the deadline is the 12th of January. So we're going to hear nothing about Jarrod Bowen. So I think if we get no news, I'd be tempted just to put him in your wildcard team and just hope that he does recover over those 9 days. I think it probably does, unless we get an indication that it is a really bad injury, because some are suggesting that it was just an impact injury, and over 9 days you would expect him to return. So I would take the risk, put Jarrod Bowen in your wildcard team unless we get any clarification that it's a bad injury, because the fixtures long term are good enough to justify holding Bowen over the next 6 game weeks. And last up, I put in Garnacho. Now, we need to remember, with this team, eventually we do need to come back to the likes of Mo Salah and Son. So where we can make a cost saving, we need to. With this team, you're probably looking at your bank and thinking, I could spend loads and upgrade him to a 7 or 8 million midfielder. And you could, but I think Garnacho at 4.8 million is just amazing value. Man United's fixtures are actually not too bad over the long term. Even though their assets are not performing well, I think at 4.8 million, his minutes have been fantastic. I think it's an FPL gem that you can't avoid right now if you are wildcarding. So I think Garnacho is in, and what it does, it enables you to have loads of money in the bank to be really flexible over the upcoming game weeks. Now, the big omission in this midfield is going to be Richarlison at Spurs, and I think he's an amazing option. I do think he probably should be in this team, maybe the expense of Saka or maybe even Jarrod Bowen, but I do think Richarlison is still a bit of a poor finisher in my eyes. I know the underlying numbers are good, but we are seeing Timo Werner come into Spurs. How is that going to impact Spurs generally? I don't know the answer to that. So Richarlison could easily be in this draft, but I personally am going to leave him out of it for now. So last up, we have the forwards, and this is where I am so excited with this pick. So first up, Ollie Watkins, the essential one in your team. Yes, I know he's expensive. Yes, I do think that he is a very, very template pick, but he's template for a reason. I think he ticks all the boxes, guaranteed game time, great fixtures long term, and Aston Villa are just a fantastic team in general. So I don't think we need to overthink it with Ollie Watkins. He's in this wildcard team. Solanke is one that I definitely think could come out of this team. He is one that I was deliberating bringing in and out at 7.1 million. If you've owned him for loads of game times, I do think you keep hold of him because you've accumulated a lot of value. And he feels like just a cheap version of Ollie Watkins. Guaranteed game time. Importantly, though, he is on penalties. And Bournemouth are just looking like a really good attacking team. Sometimes I think in FPL, we look at players and think, you know what, I want to go for the cheaper option. I want to get rid of a guy because he is doing well, but not well enough. I think Solanke is just the perfect FPL player for set and forget if you wanted to. So Solanke for me can come out of this wildcard team. You could downgrade him to João Pedro at Brighton if you want to attack those fixtures, or you take him all the way down to a 4.5 million forward and you change this wildcard draft to basically be a 3-5-2 every game week. I don't mind that at all, but I think Solanke right now is just too good to ignore, especially if you owned him in the last few game weeks where you've accumulated loads of value. So Solanke's in, but I get it if you want to rotate him. The big one here is going to be Tony. 7.9 million, 0.4% owned. He's back from his ban, and I get it. He is a major risk. We've discussed about Erling Haaland being in full training, but not getting any minutes for game week 21 potentially. Tony is the biggest risk you are possibly taking going into FPL. But with this team, I don't feel confident putting Erling Haaland into it because he's been in training but plays 0 minutes for Man City. So I don't think we need to take the risk of bringing in Erling Haaland. So what we are doing with this team is we're having a team for game week 21 and then we're basically booking in a transfer for game week 22. So I feel like, why don't we just take a punt and go for a forward who has one of the best games in game week 21, a potential captaincy option if you want to go there, and also so lowly owned that if he does return, you are getting massive gains in your team. So at 0.4% ownership, I expect Tony to come straight back into this Brentford team because he's the talisman and Brentford are struggling right now and they have a massive game at home against Nottingham Forest. If they lose that game, they are right in and amongst the relegation battle. So for me, Ivan Toney is a monumental risk, but when you're wildcarding, knowing that you need to bring in Erling Haaland in game week 22, as a 1 week punt, I think you need to go to Ivan Toney. I think he's an unbelievable option and he could be the difference between you having an incredible game week and just a really good game week. So I know it's a risk, but I really like Ivan Toney as this pick. And with this draft then, what you can do is have loads of money in the bank to then in game week 22 upgrade Ivan Toney to Erling Haaland. And then we have basically a really, really deep squad where you can basically have bench and headaches every week. But I don't really mind that because I'd rather have bench and headaches with great players than messing around with Mabama at West Ham and Charlie Taylor. I think you go for the good players. We wait to see what happens in the African Cup of Nations and Asian Cup, and then we look to downgrade players later down the line, like a Dominic Solanke to a 4.5 million to then upgrade a midfielder to Son or Salah. But for now, this is going to be the Game Week 21 wildcard draft. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Yes, guys, okay, that is going to wrap up today's Game Week 21 wildcard team video. I really hope it provided some value, and even if you're not on your wildcard, it's good to know those players that are coming up long term as alternatives for your teams. As always, if you did enjoy it, please do consider dropping a like. We're aiming for 200 on this video, and if you can, smash the subscribe button. It's the perfect time to be a new subscriber with daily content coming on this channel. My advice, if you're looking to sell Salah or Son, check out this most recent video where I've deep dived into the best replacements. I've looked at 13 potential options, and as always, have an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Cheers.